You have not been here. In fact, unless you live locally, I doubt you've even heard of half the places on this list. Welcome to Travel On. Today we're looking at little-known European towns that are picturesque, historic, and mostly off the radar for international tourists. So if you really want to get away from the hustle and bustle of busy tourist spots, you might want to check out some of these places. Ready? Let's get to it. Civita di Bagnoregio, Italy. Civita di Bagnoregio is famous in photos, but the reality is quieter than most people expect. Yes, there are crowds during the middle of the day, but outside those hours, the town almost has a peaceful abandonment feel. Once the tour buses leave, the place settles into silence. Imagine an entire town playing the quiet game. That break from souvenir shops and tourist selfies makes the whole trip worth it. You may notice there's not much to do there beyond wandering aimlessly, observing Italian life, and breathing the rare air of peace. There are no shopping streets, no nightlife, no real hotel scene. It's not a destination designed to hold you. It feels like a place that is slowly being left behind, or is already left behind, and it's okay. In fact, it's great. It knows it doesn't have to worry about what tomorrow may bring. It'll still be here waiting for you regardless. Aínsa, Spain. Aínsa feels preserved without being stagnant or frozen. The old town is intact and beautiful, but never turns into a spectacle because of its small size. Most of the activity is, of course, local, like people meeting in the square or kids playing, and even shops closing whenever they feel like it. There is tourism, but it seems limited by scale. There's only so much room, and that keeps things from becoming kitschy or overrun. No, Aínsa doesn't have the layers of attraction stacked on top of each other. Once you've seen the square and the walls, you're done. But that simplicity is exactly what draws people who want more of an authentic experience. It hasn't tried to become something bigger or act like a town that has more. The town feels happy existing at its own pace, even if visitors pass through. Motovun, Croatia. Motovun is known regionally, but internationally it still flies under the radar. And you don't know how long that will last, so if you want to see it before it becomes over-commercialized, then check it out soon. Outside festival periods, the streets are quiet and functional. But those festival periods are pretty cool too, so don't count them out. There's a film festival, a wine and truffle festival, a beer fest, and a town feast day festival. The Advent celebrations around Christmas and New Year's are a lot of fun, but like most small towns in Istria, Christmas in Motovun is celebrated quietly, centered on family and the church rather than public events. Gruyères, Switzerland. Gruyères is well known by name, but the town itself is surprisingly tiny. Outside peak hours, you can have the place to yourself. Since the stone buildings were built in the late medieval period, they're not very ornamental, but do have the classic thick walls and steep roofs to battle the Swiss winters. There's basically one single main street and a castle, so it won't take long to get the tourist portion of the trip out of the way. After that, take some time to marvel at the Swiss countryside or stroll along the homes and shops. Calvary Chapel, which sits in the middle of the town square, is actually an exhibit hall for local artists. The 16th century building does have some history, but if you're traveling on a Sunday and want to catch a service, you'd be better served heading to Parish Church of St. Theodule just down the hill. Dinkelsbühl, Germany. Dinkelsbühl is often overshadowed by towns nearby, and that's worked in its favor. It's often compared to its prettier and more famous cousin Rothenburg ob der Tauber, but I'm not sure that's a fair comparison. It may have the same intact medieval walls and streets, but Dinkelsbühl is clearly more of a residential town. Shops serve the people who live there, not just visitors, and there's no sense of urgency to move people along. And really, there is no need to move along because the town is so small that it can feel like repetition sets in. I'll be honest, if you like to see this and do that, you probably won't like Dinkelsbühl. But I liked that you could just exist among the daily life of locals. If you ever wanted to see how the other half live, well, this is your chance. Albarracín, Spain. Albarracín feels isolated in a way that maps don't fully explain. Even though it's visually striking, it's far from the beaten path. And it's that distance that keeps it from becoming overrun by tourism. They like the tourism, but don't seem to need it, and that keeps the town true to itself. The old walls, narrow streets, and pinkish stone do make it memorable, but daily life still dominates the schedule. And I began to wonder if the people who live here even notice how beautiful it all is. You don't see many foreign languages, and there's very little signage aimed at explaining the town to visitors. Schedules follow local habits, evenings are quiet, and restaurants cater to locals first, which is a great way to find authentic food. Albarracín hasn't been simplified for tourism. You're expected to adapt to the town, not the other way around. It rewards observation more than activity, and makes a wonderful stop for people interested in culture over spectacle. Castelmezzano, Italy. Some towns feel like they were shaped by geography more than by people, and Castelmezzano is one of them. It's wedged in the sharp Lucanian Dolomite peaks in a way that makes expansion impossible, which is a part of why it never grew into a tourist center. The historic center is quite small, and after you've explored that, there isn't much to do, except enjoy being in this beautiful, quaint Italian mountain village. And for me, that's more than enough reason to go. Learn the history before you go, because the town isn't built for tourists and there won't be many signs or historical markers. The town is really only busy for a few weekends during the summer, and even then, it quiets down really quick at night. If you're lucky enough to get one of the few hotel spots in the area, you'll be treated to a quiet Italian village atmosphere. Bring a friend if you want someone to talk to, but even if you don't, this is an amazing place to get lost in wandering the empty streets and listening to your own footsteps. Potes, Spain. Potes doesn't announce itself, and that's part of its appeal. Tucked into the mountains near the Picos de Europa, it functions like a local service town more than a tourist draw. I thought the streets felt practical, with shops for locals and a few cafes for taking a break. Nothing felt like a curated experience. Most visitors are Spanish hikers or people passing through, not international tourists staying multiple nights. Evenings are quiet, and you can easily picture yourself renting a place nearby and just becoming another local, living life quietly and simply. Potes hasn't been repackaged. Its charm is not marketed. It's a place where you can observe quietly without being guided or sold a version of the place. Stein am Rhein, Switzerland. River towns are usually a gold mine of tourists, but Stein am Rhein bucks that trend. The painted facades are striking, and the half-timbered houses have a calming effect when you view them from the bridge early in the day or late in the evening when the sunlight hits them just right. Once the riverboats leave, the streets calm down quickly. If you're lucky enough to book one of the few hotels in town, grab yourself a late dinner. There are several restaurants that stay open until 10 or 11 p.m. Take that time to listen to just how quiet the place can be after the last riverboat sets off to the next town. Gmunden, Austria. Gmunden sits quietly on the edge of Lake Traunsee, and despite being scenic, it manages to be another town that feels very much like it exists for the residents. The streets of the historic center are narrow and lined with pastel-colored buildings, and there's no overwhelming tourism infrastructure crowding the space. When I walked through, most of the activity came from locals going about their day, stopping at small cafes or chatting in the square. The lakeshore is calm, and even the waterfront promenade doesn't feel staged. People fish, row boats, and enjoy the view. There's history here, and there's charm, but it hasn't been packaged or over-explained for visitors. That's what makes Gmunden such a good fit for people trying to avoid over-tourism. It's authentic, small-scale, and lived in, not a destination built for sightseeing. Frigiliana, Spain. Frigiliana is often photographed, but it still operates like a small Andalusian village first. Once you step away from the most obvious streets, the town becomes quieter and more residential very quickly. This gives you an opportunity to feel like a local for a bit, maybe get the sense of what it's like to live here. The crowds do thin out fast, especially in the mornings and evenings, so if you want to linger longer, you're treated to a taste of old Spain. Again, like other towns on this list, there's no sprawl and no attractions pulling you from one part of the town to the other. People live here, work here, and go about their routines with little adjustment for you or any other visitors. Maybe pop out your translator and start a conversation. You know, I always advocate for talking to people on your journeys, and you may be welcomed with tales of local lore since many travelers only stop briefly and move on to the coast, never bothering to ask about life here. Frigiliana feels like a real community rather than a destination. You go to a town like this to be a part of the daily life, not to demand that it entertain you. So take your time and enjoy the slow pace. Kazimierz Dolny, Poland. Kazimierz Dolny doesn't feel like a place that was designed to impress visitors, even though it easily could. It's known within Poland, but outside of that, it remains somewhat obscure. The town sits quietly along the Vistula River with a market square that still feels like it belongs to locals going about their day. The Renaissance merchant houses are worn rather than polished, and that gives the town an authentic, lived-in feel. Walking uphill toward the castle ruins, the views open slowly instead of all at once, and nothing feels staged. What stands out most are the natural ravines just outside the town, narrow paths carved into the soft earth that locals use as walking trails. Kazimierz has a long connection to artists, and you can feel that influence in the small galleries and cafes scattered through town. It's a place that feels settled, not performed. Morella, Spain. The approach to Morella is more dramatic than the town itself, which may be why it stays overlooked. From a distance, the walled hilltop looks monumental, but once inside, life feels accessible and calm. The historic center is compact and practical, not staged. I was surprised by how quickly things shut down at night. Most of the tourists are from the region on holiday, who come for a few hours and leave, not international. Find your zen as you walk through the town. Grab some lunch and gaze upon buildings the same way medieval knights from the Kingdom of Aragon had done centuries ago. Morella hasn't tried to turn its history into an experience. you have to find it. It still feels like a town that just happens to sit beneath a castle, not one built to showcase it. Brantôme, France. Brantôme looks like the kind of town that should be busy, but somehow never really is. It sits neatly along the river with an old abbey prominently on display, yet it doesn't draw international attention the way other nearby Dordogne towns do. Most of the people out and about were locals running errands or French day trippers who knew exactly where they were going. Tourism exists, but it's gentle and definitely seasonal. The town center is small enough that once you walk it, there's nowhere else to go. The town isn't flashy and doesn't feel it needs to perform or entertain. It is what it is. Shops close early, streets empty out, and the evenings belong to the residents. Take some time to sit and enjoy the sound of the river, French chatter in the distance, or absorb the light medieval atmosphere of the abbey often linked to Charlemagne. Brantôme hasn't been repurposed for outsiders, making it a wonderful stop for people who just need some time to themselves. Bacharach, Germany. Bacharach sits along the Rhine, yet somehow avoids the attention given to nearby towns. River cruises pass by, but many don't stop, and that makes a difference as evenings can get quiet. The half-timbered houses aren't arranged for spectacle, they're just where people live. There's very little nightlife, limited shopping, and no attempt to stretch the town into an all-day attraction. Once the day visitors leave, Bacharach reverts to itself. And it's glorious. Take walks, sit by the river, eat long, slow lunches. It's not hard to enjoy the town if you're paying attention. Its location hasn't inflated its ego or its tourism budget. The town is still sized for locals, not crowds, and it doesn't try to compete with more famous Rhine stops. While the others may be prettier, I felt Bacharach was more authentic. Rimetea, Romania. Rimetea feels anchored to its landscape more than to history or tourism. Surrounded by mountains, the village operates on a daily cycle that doesn't change much for visitors. It has a genuinely residential feel. Houses were lived in, streets were quiet, and life unfolded without explanation or performance. Tourism exists, but it's light and seasonal. There aren't many places to stay and little infrastructure to support the crowds, and that limitation preserves the atmosphere for those lucky enough to stay a night or two. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've been to any of these towns, let me know your thoughts about them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your take on them, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, stay safe and travel on.